Hello, students. Hello, students. Thank you, thank you. Welcome back. Let us continue with signal transduction part 14. Let's just do a little review of what we did last time first. Let's see here. Let's get rid of this and this. Yeah, dopamine, tyrosine, we've already done all of that. Okay, we talked about the adrenergic receptors. If you have if the catecholamine has a small amino end, it's going to be more likely to bind to alpha 1. If it has a large amino end, it's going to be more likely to bind to beta 2. And we looked at the difference between epinephrine. If you have epinephrine here and you start removing the hydroxyls, then you form an amphetamine. And now we're where we left off. Okay, what we're doing here is going to be, this is the signal transduction pathway leading to penile erection. Okay, and let me actually put that somewhere. I don't know why I didn't put it there before. Okay. So this is going to be penile erection. Now, for penile erection, what you want to do, what has to happen, there are blood vessels leading to the penis, and what you want to do, you want to actually relax those blood vessels. And when those blood vessels relax, the blood is going to go into those blood vessels to call penile erection. And so, we start this signal transduction cascade with a gas, nitric oxide, NO. The nitric oxide comes into those smooth muscle cells, and then it activates an enzyme, guanylyl cyclase. And so the guanylyl cyclase converts GTP into cyclic GMP. Okay. Now the cyclic GMP then goes on to activate, a protein. So it's going to go to activate a protein. And that protein, here, this protein is going to be very happy that it's activated. Okay, let's go back. The question is, if you all would remind me when you ask a question, say, Dr. Mayer, to repeat the question. That way, so it'll be on the video. The first protein was guanylyl cyclase. You know, it converts GTP into cyclic GMP, just like adenylyl cyclase converts ATP into what? CAMP. Very good. And so, now, remember, what did cyclic AMP activate? What protein did cyclic AMP activate? Yes. Yeah, protein kinase A. Okay. Now we have cyclic GMP. What do you think cyclic GMP is going to activate? Protein kinase G. Could it be simpler? You would have to hire someone to make this more difficult. Protein kinase G. So cyclic GMP phosphorylates protein kinase G. Now, protein kinase G is going to go on to phosphorylate another protein. So, protein kinase G is going to go on to phosphorylate. This is where things differ. It's going to phosphorylate a protein here. And this protein is called myosin light chain kinase. Have we seen myosin light chain kinase before? We have. But in other smooth muscles, when you phosphorylate myosin light chain kinase, it activates myosin light chain kinase. However, the wiring is different in the smooth muscles of the penis. When you phosphorylate myosin light chain kinase here, we're going to phosphorylate this protein. When we phosphorylate the protein here, then we're going to deactivate it. So we're going to deactivate this protein. So this protein's activity is going to go down. So now we have no myosin light chain kinase activity. Okay? But I can't explain this if I say there's no activity. Let's assume that there is activity and see what would happen if there were activity. So we're going to get rid of these, get rid of the phosphorylation. Now, let's say that it's active. If it were active, if this protein were active, then this protein would lead to if this were active, this would lead to contraction. Just a second, I have to make sure things make sense. Okay. And so with these contractile proteins here, this one is always, you have to figure out what goes on with this one. Myosin light chain kinase. It's deactivated. It's turned off. Okay. Okay. Now, if myosin light chain is activated, then it's going to phosphorylate. It's going to phosphorylate these proteins here. And when these proteins are phosphorylated, that's going to lead to contraction. I actually want to put that on its own layer. I'm just going to put one big phosphate. When they are phosphorylated, then that turns this protein on and we get contraction. And now once this cell becomes contracted, then we get a good color here. You get no blood flow. Well, let's put it this way. Then you close blood vessels. You close those blood vessels. Or you constrict those blood vessels. And then once those blood vessels are constricted, then you get no blood flow. To the penis. And then you ultimately get, if you have no blood flow, you're going to get no erection. And I'm going to go over all of this again before we talk about what actually happens. So what's going to happen? Protein kinase G becomes activated. And then protein kinase G, let's say there is no protein kinase G. Let's just see what happens under normal circumstances. If there's no protein kinase G, then myosin light chain kinase is activated. It phosphorylates those contractile proteins. When those contractile proteins are phosphorylated, then you get contraction. That contraction closes the blood vessels. You get no blood flow to the penis, and you get no erection. Does that part make sense? Okay. Now let's talk about what happens when you get nitric oxide here. So nitric oxide comes in, you get guanylyl cyclase, protein kinase G becomes activated. Now what's going to happen? Protein kinase G is going to phosphorylate. It's going to phosphorylate this myosin light chain kinase. So this becomes phosphorylated. And is that going to turn this protein on or off? Not on. It's going to turn it off, because remember, it was already on before, because that leads to contraction and no erection. It's already on. When protein kinase G comes in and phosphorylates myosin light chain kinase, that turns it off. That's the key here. That's what you have to understand. It turns this off. And so if if myosin light chain kinase is off, do you get phosphorylation of these contractile proteins? No, you get no contraction of these proteins. So you get no phosphorylation of these proteins. So these contractile proteins don't contract. And if these proteins don't contract, do we close the blood vessels? No, we don't close the blood vessels. And if we don't close the blood vessels, do we have reduced blood flow? No, we don't have any reduced blood flow, because the blood can flow easily now. And do we have erection now? Yes, we do have erection. Make sense? This one is kind of a tricky one. That's why you have to look at this one, because it's the opposite of all the other ones. There's something that happens in this one that's the opposite. Okay, now let's look at something else. Okay, if that makes sense, let me go over it one more time. Because I need to make sure everyone understands this. Let's see what happens if there's just there's no erection. No erection here. There's going to be myosin light chain kinase it's going to be on. In a normal situation, it's going to be on. So myosin light chain kinase, under regular situations, is on. It phosphorylates those contractile proteins. You close the blood vessels, you have no blood flow, and you have no erection. That's what happens under normal circumstances. Now, if there's an erection needed, then nitric oxide comes in. Nitric oxide activates guanylyl cyclase. Guanylyl cyclase becomes active. It produces cyclic GMP. Cyclic GMP activates protein kinase G. Protein kinase G phosphorylates myosin light chain kinase and turns it off. So now myosin light chain kinase is off. You don't get phosphorylation. That means you don't get contraction. And now if you don't get contraction, those blood vessels don't close. And if those blood vessels don't close, the blood can come to the penis and you get erection. Everybody okay with that before we talk about regulation? Excellent, excellent. Now, let's talk about something. I'm going to ask you all a question. Cyclic GMP here. Cyclic GMP. Do you want to have cyclic GMP there in these cells all of the time? Do you want it to stay there all of the time? No, you don't want it there all the time. Now I'm going to zoom out here so you can think about it. If you had cyclic GMP there all of the time, if it just stayed there, what would happen? What would happen? Right. It would just be a sustained erection, and you don't want that to happen. So we need some way to get rid of the cyclic GMP. Okay.
So when men use those cancers, does it promote that from not turning on?
excellent question. Excellent question. The question is, so when men use ED drugs, does that affect cyclic GMP? Leave the cyclic GMP around? And the question and the answer to that is yes, and we'll see that. That's what I'm ready to show you right now. So what happens on the normal situations? So let's get rid of this. What happens to get rid of that cyclic GMP here, you're going to have, there's going to be an enzyme here that's going to convert the cyclic GMP into GMP. And that enzyme, let's see if you all remember. Well, let's give it a circle. What was the name of the enzyme that converted cyclic AMP into AMP? Phosphodiesterase. Excellent. And the name of this enzyme is phosphodiesterase. So, but it's phosphodiesterase, a different type. It's phosphodiesterase 5, I think it is. Yes, it's phosphodiesterase 5. And so phosphodiesterase, to prevent a sustained relaxation of those blood vessels, phosphodiesterase 5 breaks the cyclic GMP down into GMP. So once the nitric oxide goes away, then you don't need it anymore. Phosphodiesterase comes in, gets rid of the cyclic GMP. Now, the question is this. I'm going to draw something here, and I need your answer. What if we could create a drug here? What would happen if we created a drug, if we could create a drug to block phosphodiesterase 5? Okay. Again, what would happen if we could create a drug to block phosphodiesterase 5? What would happen in that situation? Would you have more erection or less erection? You're going to have more, because you're going to have more cyclic GMP around. And the drug that does this, a very famous drug that does this, is sildenafil. Right, sildenafil, that drug blocks phosphodiesterase 5. And if you block phosphodiesterase 5, you keep lots of cyclic GMP. If you have lots of cyclic GMP, then that's going to lead to more erection. Make sense? Make sure it makes sense. Now this drug, that's its scientific name, but it has a more common name. This drug is also known as Viagra. Is it AGARA or just RA? I don't know. We'll just put that. You know what I'm talking about. Make sense? Excellent. Excellent. Is there... Okay. I'm trying to think. Okay, put your notes away. Question? Oh, I'm just going to ask you all some questions now. Oh yeah, we're going to have a quiz. I'm just going to ask you some questions. What is the name of the gas that dentists use? Nitrous oxide. What is the name of the gas that's used in penile erection? Nitric oxide. Nitric oxide activates what enzyme? Guanylyl cyclase. Guanylyl cyclase converts GTP into what product? Cyclic GMP. Now there is an enzyme. Well, let's do this first. Cyclic GMP activates what protein kinase? Protein kinase G. Now, protein kinase G phosphorylates what protein? Myosin light chain kinase. Does that turn myosin light chain kinase on or off? Turns it off. And if myosin light chain kinase is off, does that lead to constriction of blood vessels or relaxation of blood vessels? Relaxation of blood vessels. There is an enzyme. Do you want to keep the cyclic GMP around all of the time? No, you don't. There's an enzyme that breaks down this cyclic GMP into GMP. In penile erection, what is the name of that enzyme? Phosphodiesterase 5. What is the name of the drug, the scientific name of the drug that blocks phosphodiesterase 5? Sildenafil. What is the common name of this drug? Viagra. Any questions? Have a great day, you all.